We've got Destinee and Bailey here with us today. How are you guys doing?
We're fine.
Yeah, we're doing really, really well.
Great. Now, your podcast that you do together is called Imperfect Timing. So can you just describe to people that might not have heard it before what the basic idea of that podcast is?
Yeah, so Destiny and I have been friends for a good number of years, and we're really good, or at least we think we are, at judging things. And we also really like to watch movies and TV shows and discuss them. And so the idea to start a podcast about movies and different topics surrounding movies just kind of was born in our heads to do because we love to talk. And so what we do is we watch movies that fall under different categories and basically we just judge them.
Yeah. And do you talk about all types of movies, no matter what genre they are?
Definitely. We don't discriminate against movies at all. If you look at some of the season 1 episodes, there's anything from Disney movies to just random indie movies. We talk about everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you judge them, I take it's still overall a rather positive experience listening to the podcast, despite the judgmentalness.
I would definitely say that it is. We include a lot of comedy, and it's fun because we're feeding off of each other, and especially like if the movie isn't like super popular and it's kind of something that hasn't really been discovered, it's always fun to watch it and see what's in store for us, especially if we've never even heard of them and we've just happened upon them. So it's definitely still positive and fun to listen to.
Yeah. And I suppose, have you ever come across a film that's just perfect and you struggle to judge it?
We have not come across a film like that yet. It would be great if we found one. There are a couple episodes where we try to give just the positive light of a movie, but there's still some negative we can find. We might be just a little bit pessimistic, but
yeah. So, being best friends, how does that dynamic work on the podcast? Do you think it helps a bit with the sort of chemistry you have on air?
I think it definitely does. Destiny and I read each other and take cues off of each other very well. We also have very similar senses of humor. And I just feel like once we really get into something, especially if we're excited about it or it's something that like really, really caught our attention, it tends to be the same things that catch both of our attention. So we just know what the other is probably thinking because we're thinking it as well. And it's just very easy to build off one another.
Yeah, it's a great skill to have. I guess it's like twins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always call Bailey like my twin sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's just the perfect thing to have when you're hosting a show together, because a lot of the time when two hosts are kind of forced together by management or something, you can tell if they don't really have any relationship beyond the podcast. But with you guys, I guess it really comes across because you are friends.
Yeah, it's definitely I do notice sometimes people don't have a really great chemistry, especially when they're doing like podcast or show together. But we can't fake our chemistry. It's just there.
Yeah. And have you been doing this podcast kind of apart and having to do it on the phone to each other or on Zoom or Skype, or have you been in the same room to record some of the episodes?
We've been in different cities actually, and that was definitely a big thing, is us working through our technical inaptitude, because the beginning episodes you can definitely tell we're figuring things out, but I feel like we've got it down now, and we're still in separate rooms, but we're looking at each other like while we're doing the podcast, so we're seeing each other, so we're there in the same room, just not like really.
Yeah. I guess, do you feel that looking at each other sort of helps in a way?
It does. It helps and also hinders, because I know sometimes when Bailey laughs, I laugh, or the other way around, and we get really, really carried away. but it just makes the podcast that much more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the best stuff to listen to is hosts laughing, and I think people always feel that people might not want to listen to that, but really, as long as the audience get the joke as well, it's great to hear the presenters laughing.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when, because we try not to talk too much about the movies before we do the podcast because we want everything to be really fresh. But sometimes we'll kind of start somewhere and it'll be a few minutes later and we'll end up somewhere completely different to where we were supposed to be. And it's just because we can't stop like picking on a scene or finding it funny or just building off of it. So it's definitely, it does play into that chemistry and the laughing and joy of just watching the movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some examples of movies that you've critiqued so far?
Well, we've done a lot of Disney movies. I would say for just the first season, which, only has like 6 episodes, we've done, I think maybe 3 of those were Disney movies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are definitely our favorites, just because they're pretty popular, but we can find a lot of fault in them. So and it's funny when we can find other people who also find the same faults. So that's really nice.
Yeah, and I guess with Disney Plus, they're quite accessible these days as well.
Yes,
definitely.
That made it much more easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And do you have any plans to have any guests on the show at any point?
That is something we definitely want to do. It's a little bit difficult because we want to find like the right person to fit in with us. We're thinking of maybe bringing in a couple of guests or for the second upcoming season. There's none on the first, but we definitely want to try and get some new perspective in there, especially if it comes to something that like a movie that Destinee and I really, really love. It would always be cool to have a guest and see their perspective on stuff. So we definitely want to bring that into the podcast at some point.
Yeah. And do you two ever have contrasting views about the same film?
Very rarely. It's exciting when we do have contrasting views because it makes it fun for us to argue. Yeah. It also makes it kind of dangerous because when we argue, we really argue. Yeah. So when we do have contrasting opinions, we like to explore it on the podcast, but we have to be just super careful and respectful of each other.
Yeah. And I think if our viewers or our listeners wanna see an episode such as that, we did an episode about Timothée Chalamet. So they should definitely check out that episode if they're looking for some friendly disagreement.
Yeah, and I guess having a guest in the future would probably help if they've got a contrasting view, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's where the idea of that fresh new perspective comes from.
Yeah. So what other films and ideas have you got for the season 2 coming up?
See, we have so many, we can't even pin down some of them. Yeah. We've been planning for season 2 for a little while now, and we have a couple of the episodes, ready to go, or the episode titles and things like that ready to go. But I know we'll change our minds. But you can definitely expect some fun, some really cool new episodes, and some old Disney movies as well. So things like that.
Yeah, that's exciting. And do you have any particular favourite ones of the ones you've done so far?
I really, it's actually our last episode that of season 1. Yeah. We discussed our indie movies actually boring, and we just picked 3 random indie movies that we hadn't seen and watched them. And it was fun because we did it for our last episode, so we did it completely unedited. So that was definitely a fun challenge in both watching the movies because they were so different from one another, but also in recording the podcast episode because we had to make sure that we were at the top of our game in terms of comedy and everything because it was unedited and we wanted to keep it, true to that. So that's definitely my favorite. Yeah,
absolutely. So where are we able to check out the podcast if we'd like to have a listen for our pleasure?
You can check us out on Instagram at imperfect_timing. And
also at Twitter on the same handle.
Yeah, everything's the same handle. So Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, imperfect_timing.
And if you'd like to listen to the podcast, we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at Imperfect Timing.
Great. Well, we'll make sure to have a listen to that and binge watch it until the early hours, probably.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. It's been great having you here.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.